mystified about what the motivation anybody thinks I had and would act on in such a public poll. I don't understand it. And the allegations I take very seriously. They're saying that this was election interference, which is a crime. So the idea that I intentionally set up to deliver this response, when I've never done that before, I've had plenty of opportunities to do it. It's not my ethic. But to suggest without a single shred of evidence that I was in cahoots with somebody, I was being paid by somebody, it's all just kind of, it's hard to pay too much attention to it, except that they're accusing me of a crime.
So, I mean, this feels like it has a real chilling effect. Like, I mean, shout out to the standards department. Okay, standards is always making sure that we are keeping the bar high and substantive and accurate. But what George Stephanopoulos said in that interview, I mean, it seems to hold up with what the judge said after the fact. And now his news organization and himself, George Stephanopoulos himself, is paying $1 million of his own money to the lawyers, and ABC at $15 million. It's insane.
And you're a self-described data girl, right? And Kay mentioned the poll that came out right before the election. I'm sure you've been crunching the numbers since. What have you learned? What went wrong?
Well, I'm not here to break any news. If you were hoping that I had landed on exactly why things went wrong, I have not. It does sort of awaken me in the middle of the night, and I think, well, maybe I should check this. This is something that would be very odd if it were to happen, but we've explored everything. The Des Moines Register, in an unprecedented move for transparency, has put online our crosstabs, our weighting system, and my analysis, and that I've not needed to update because it was pretty complete. We don't know. Do I wish I knew? Yes, I wish I knew. But as I sit here today, you know, one of the political commentators before election, but after the poll, said, you know, they've got all of these pollsters that are fidgeting with their numbers, and they're adding this into their weighting structure, and they're doing this with their sampling. And Ann Selzer has never had anything to fix. Well, till now.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, and Katerina's going to ask you a little bit more about methodology, so I won't get deep into it yet. But as Kay mentioned, you have a number of polls in the past that were remarkably accurate, and not just when everybody else was, on occasions when others were not, like that Ernst Braley poll in 2014. And maybe the answer is the same, but I'm just curious if you have any sense of why that methodology that has served you well for most of your previous careers suddenly did not in 2024.
I wish I knew the answer to that. But like I said, there wasn't anything that we saw that needed to be fixed. The reality is that more people supporting Donald Trump turned out. I'm eagerly awaiting the Secretary of State's turnout reports that will happen in January to see what we can glean from that. But there wasn't an adjustment to my data when we saw that it was going to be a shocker that I would have said, okay, let's adjust it. It's not like I know ahead of time what the right numbers are going to be in the future. So you kind of take the data designed to reveal to me our best shot at what the future is going to look like. I'm mystified about what the motivation anybody thinks I had and would act on in such a public poll. I don't understand it. And the allegations I take very seriously. They're saying that this was election interference, which is a crime. So the idea that I intentionally set up to deliver this response, when I've never done that before, I've had plenty of opportunities to do it. It's not my ethic. But to suggest without a single shred of evidence that I was in cahoots with somebody, I was being paid by somebody, it's all just kind of, it's hard to pay too much attention to it, except that they're accusing me of a crime.
Please, could you come in on?
I want to expand on the defamation lawsuits. Could you see moving that to other people with individual platforms, social media influencers, people that...
Or newspapers, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do. I think you have to do it because they're very dishonest. We need a great media. We need a fair media. We need, it's very important. And we need borders. We need walls, but we need borders and we need fair elections. You look at California, millions and millions of ballots were sent out. They're still counting the vote in California. With the machines, they're counting the vote. If you had paper ballots, the votes would have been counted 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Now you need fair elections, you need borders, and you need a fair press. And the press is, no, I see others. I have a few others that I'm doing. I'm going to, as an example, I'm doing this not because I want to. I'm doing this because I feel I have an obligation to. I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper, which had a very, very good pollster who got me right all the time. And then just before the election, she said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points, and it became the biggest story all over the world because I was going to win Iowa by 20 points. The farmers love me, and I love the farmers. And it was interesting the way she did it. She brought it down 2 weeks before. She said I was going to only win by 4. That was a big story. But that was good because she brought it down from like 22 points to 4 or whatever the number was. Way up, an easy win. Never even thought to go there. I respect them. I love them, and they understand there's no reason to go there because she brought it from way up, walk away, which it was, and it turned out to be in the election too, by the way. It was a win by many, many points. And then she brought it down very smartly to 4 a couple of weeks before, and everyone said, wow, that's amazing. He's only up by 4 points. Then she brought it down to where it was down by 3 or 4, whatever the number she used. And that was the Des Moines Register, and it was their parent. And in my opinion, it was fraud, and it was election interference. You know, she's gotten me right always. She's a very good pollster. She knows what she was doing. And she then quit before. And we'll probably be filing a major lawsuit against them today or tomorrow. And we're filing one on 60 Minutes, you know about that, where they took Kamala's answer, which was a crazy answer, a horrible answer, and they took the whole answer out, and they replaced it with something else she said later on in the interview, which wasn't a great answer, but it wasn't like the first one. The first was grossly incompetent. It was weird. And that was fraud and election interference by their news magazine, a big part of CBS News. So as you know, we're involved in that one. We're involved in one which has been going on for a while and very successfully against Bob Woodward, where he didn't quote me properly from the tapes. And then on top of everything else, he sold the tapes, which he wasn't allowed to do. He could only use them for reporting purposes, not for sale purposes. And he admits that. And I think we'll be successful in that one. And we have one very interestingly on Pulitzer, because reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post got Pulitzer Prizes for their wonderful, accurate, and highly professional reporting on the Russia hoax. Well, it turned out to be a hoax, and they were exactly wrong. People, like many people, John Solomon, Sean Hannity's not for Pulitzer, but Sean Hannity got it right. Many people got it right. Tucker got it right. Jesse got it right. Laura got it right. Janine got it right. A lot of people got it right. They didn't get anything. They gave it to reporters that got it absolutely wrong, and now everybody admits it was a hoax. And I want them to take back the Pulitzer Prizes and pay big damages. And I think we're doing very well on that one. They have no excuse for it. They gave a Pulitzer Prize to writers that got Russia wrong. And so I think we're doing well. And I feel I have to do this. I shouldn't really be the one to do it. It should have been the Justice Department or somebody else, but I have to do it. It costs a lot of money to do it, but we have to straighten out the press. Our press is very corrupt, almost as corrupt as our elections.
I'm going to look at this, and I'm not kidding. I view this as, I hope there's plenty of lawyers out there going, okay, plenty of individual journalists have been disparaged by Donald Trump. I mean, again, look at what he did to E. Jean Carroll. there is precedent for him being held liable for disparaging people personally. And he's done it so much that I know he loves to be litigious. And, I always thought the lawsuit was just designed for him to say he had a lawsuit. Right? It wasn't right that it's sort of, why do you file the lawsuit against the media
when
company?
I was at CNN, he filed a lawsuit against CNN. He's filed lots and lots and lots of lawsuits.
And they always get thrown out. And this one would have too. I just don't see how they thought it wasn't going to be. Other than it was clear that there were, I think, Trump's side felt more motivated to go further than they have in previous suits. Normally they sort of accept reality after the PR side of it is done, you know, for the suit.
Right after he's kind of muddied the PR waters.
This was stunning to me and absolutely a gut punch to anybody that works at a major media company, because I think it sets a precedent that is going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult to get out from under potentially. I just, I think the risk of losing this suit was 5%.
Right.
Like
for ABC.
For ABC. So, this was a decision to buy off a bad PR.
Note, Kristen, I don't want to overstate Trump's friendliness and genial attitude at this press conference, because this weekend ABC News agreed to pay $16 million, including legal fees, to settle a defamation lawsuit brought by Trump against the network and their anchor, George Stephanopoulos. And that obviously will not be the end of this campaign against the media, legal campaign against the media. We heard him go after many other news outlets today. Take a listen.
We're going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper. We're filing one on 60 Minutes. We're involved in one which has been going on for a while and very successfully against Bob Woodward. We have one very interestingly on Pulitzer, because reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post got Pulitzer Prizes for their wonderful, accurate, and highly professional reporting on the Russia hoax.
We don't have time to go into all of that, but just to touch base on a couple of these. One of them is the people of Iowa, the Des Moines Register. That's because there was a poll that was inaccurate. Mm-hmm. The one on 60 Minutes is because they didn't like the editing that had been done to the Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, This is wildly ridiculous.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind here is that Donald Trump feels like he won. I mean, this weekend, by having a settlement with ABC, one that many people did not think was going to come to fruition. They thought that this would end up in court, or that it would certainly not be a settlement in which ABC paid $16 million and issued a public apology, which was part of this, has been a situation which is empowered and emboldened.
First of all, tell us what this suit is. This is not exactly a defamation suit.
No, unlike a lot of the lawsuits Trump has filed in the past, usually unsuccessfully against news outlets, this is not a defamation suit. This is a case in Iowa that relies on a pretty dramatic or aggressive interpretation of the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act. That's a law that prohibits deception when advertising or selling merchandise. So you can imagine Trump's legal team here looking for a law in Iowa they can use to sue Ann Selzer and the Des Moines Register and its parent company, Gannett. And they've landed on this consumer fraud protection law. They're basically arguing that the poll was an example of fraud, that it was, quote, election interfering fiction. Now, as you said, John, Ann Selzer has a sterling reputation, or at least she did until this year. Her pre-election poll was wildly wrong, and she has acknowledged so. She went through the data last month trying to figure out what went wrong, and she came to the conclusion that she did her job the best she could, and the poll was off for a variety of obscure reasons that just chalked up to the reality of the difficulty of polling. In other words, she's saying she reported the facts the best she could. But Trump is saying this poll was fiction. It distorted the final days of the election. This seems like a legal long shot, but oftentimes when Trump files suit, the goal is not necessarily to win, it's to make his opponents suffer. And this might be one of those cases, John.
Yeah, look, polls miss sometimes. I mean, that's why there's always a margin of error. This was way out of the margin of error, but polls miss sometimes. You talk about how sometimes Trump does this to cause pain. There may be an even bigger strategy here, which Trump frankly alluded to at this news conference as he heads into this new administration.
Yes, talking about straightening out the press. That's a euphemism for trying to tone down any and all negative or critical coverage. And we know that he spent his first term in office deriding so-called fake news, trying to label real news as fake. Now he's taking actions, not just using his words, but taking actions. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he was able to prevail against ABC with that shocking $15 million settlement on Saturday. But the broader point, as Puck's Tara Palmieri wrote last night, the broader point might here be to deter polling in general, to stop pollsters from coming out with polls that make Trump look bad. He has a tremendous amount of power right now, and Trump seems intent on using it in aggressive ways he didn't use the first time around.
I mean, Hadass, it seems like this is one of those Trump lawsuit threats, but it sounds like he's making good on the threat. Apparently, he's not suing for defamation here. What can you tell us?
Yeah, he's made good on the threat. The lawsuit has been filed, and he's not suing for defamation, libel, anything like that. He's actually suing under what you could say is a very aggressive reading of the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act. Now, this act, it prohibits deception when advertising or selling merchandise. That's to say something like, oh, buy this product and you're going to lose 15 pounds tomorrow. That's what it's aimed at. But he is taking that and saying that the news coverage that was caused by this poll, as you noted, that flurry of coverage said, oh, maybe Harris can pull this off, even though Trump had won it 2 times before. He says that this was intended, that it was intentional to artificially help Democrats during the campaign. He doesn't show in this lawsuit that Seltzer or the Des Moines Register did anything improper in this poll or how it was done. And we do have a statement from the Des Moines Register. They've acknowledged that the poll did not show the ultimate margin of President Trump's election day victory. But I do want to read part of this to you because they also say they acknowledge this by releasing the poll's full demographics, crosstabs, weighted and unweighted data, as well as a technical explanation from pollster Ann Selzer. They say we stand by our reporting on the matter and believe the lawsuit is without merit. Now, Jim, we've all seen polls in the past. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Even Donald Trump himself has pushed rather unscientific online polls. And Ann Selzer herself has even wondered if the coverage of her poll actually helped push more Republicans out to vote for President Trump. But Jim, even if this gets thrown out, and a lot of experts in media law and the like say this isn't going to go anywhere, in these types of situations, the process is the punishment. Because even just showing up to the court and having to sit through all this, paying your lawyers, that costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. And for a smaller organization, for an independent journalist, because President Trump was actually asked, are you going to go after social media influencers or smaller outlets? And he said, yes, I will. And you know what, Jim? This is a page out of the authoritarian playbook. Because if you look at places like Hungary's Viktor Orban, this is what they've done when they go after the media. They don't actually usually go for things like defamation and libel or things that might be more associated with media. They go after things like tax investigations, fraud investigations, and that can really drain an outlet, and it can put a chill, because then people might be more wary of publishing. They're more careful, or they might even be more wary of publishing some sort of opinion polls. But what's most worrying about this, Jim, is the fact that in that press conference, he said he thinks the Justice Department should be doing this, and he shouldn't have to do this on a civil level, essentially saying it should be a criminal level.
Your office objected to us getting Delta records for flights that you may have taken when Mr. Reid.
Well, no. I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
So my question was, you have any
I
problem?
object to getting any personal records of mine.
And here we go. A Georgia Court of Appeals has disqualified the Fulton County DA Fani Willis from that election interference case. It's coming down right now. The case against Trump and more than a dozen others already largely stalled, as you know. The new ruling means that it will be up to the prosecuting attorney's council in the state of Georgia to find another prosecutor to decide on the case, to take it over and make a decision as to whether or not they continue with the prosecution of the incoming president.
You 0-2? Baby girl, you're 0-2, because 9 times out of 10, you know, the prosecutor from YSL, she just can't seem to catch a win. So remember, she got packed off the YSL case. Young Thug and them, they packed her up. Then she tried to go prosecute Donald Trump, but then it says that they appeals court dismissing Fani Willis as prosecutor in Donald Trump's election case. Basically, because she got caught for somebody in that case. So you know what my next question is, right? Who you was in YSL or on that case that they had to pack you up? Because this is your second case getting packed up for some shit. And 9 times out of 10, it's all because you couldn't stay off of literally.
In this hour with breaking news just into CNN, the Georgia prosecutor leading the state's election interference case against President-elect Donald Trump is now disqualified. CNN's Caitlin Polans is here with more. Caitlin, what can you tell us about this? This is just coming in the last several minutes. This is a big development.
A big development, and a big development that Donald Trump has wanted for a long time. That case against him in Georgia, the criminal case, where it's accusing him and several others of a racketeering conspiracy related to the 2020 election, it's already been paused. Now, it's not even backburnered. This is a case that will be dead in the water because the Georgia Court of Appeals is now saying that Fani Willis, the leader of the prosecution against Donald Trump, the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia, she should be disqualified from being able to bring that case. The Georgia Court of Appeals is saying that it's a significant appearance of impropriety caused by the conduct of a public prosecutor. That is Willis, how she behaved, how she was speaking about the case, about Trump publicly, about how she was having a relationship with the top prosecutor that was concealed in this, a man named Nathan Wade. All of that, previously, the trial level judge had looked at and said, Fani Willis can stay on this case. We're not dismissing the indictment. But the Court of Appeals is now taking another look and saying, no, the trial judge was wrong. Fani Willis should be disqualified from continuing to lead this case. It would be a long process, or it will be a long process to replace her, which is why I say this case is dead in the water now without Fani Willis, the person who was leading this case against Donald Trump in Fulton County. And just to keep tabs on how many cases there are against Donald Trump criminally, the other two in federal court, January 6th, and classified documents, those are dismissed. And then the additional case in New York City, where he was set to be sentenced, that sentencing is now not happening. So as Donald Trump enters the presidency, each of these courts that is handling a criminal case is essentially removing that issue from him to have to deal with in any period of time in the near future.
So Fulton County DA Fani Willis has been removed from the case against Trump by the Georgia Court of Appeals. It doesn't mean that the case is going to get dismissed necessarily. It just means that it's getting handed over to a different DA, to which it'll probably be dismissed. At this point, nothing is going to surprise me. Eventually, we knew, I mean, this is not shocking. We knew that this was going to go to, eventually go to a court that was going to rule in Donald Trump's favor. That's how it works. You know, that's how law and order works in this country. If you have deep pockets and you're guilty of sin, you just employ every delay tactic that you can. And eventually somebody will find a court that rules in your favor. That's how the rich do it. You know, rather than fighting it in court and exonerating yourself, which, you know, but why do that? What's the fun in that? One thing I do know is that when final judgment comes, your deep pockets ain't going to save you, bud.
Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states.
Court is expected to be appealed to the Georgia Supreme Court, but this is a really decisive ruling against Fani Willis being able to continue this case.
Catherine, what's your reaction? What do you make of this ruling?
It's not shocking. It was shocking when we found out that there was this relationship, and you just said it was an unforced error. But usually appellate courts defer to the lower court, the trial judge, who fashioned a remedy. He said Nathan Wade, that's the man she was having an affair with, had to leave, but the office could stay. And this court has said, nope, they didn't. This court said that Judge McAfee did not really appreciate that her decision making wasn't just the indictment. It was who to charge, how to charge it. And that's at the time when this alleged romantic relationship was going on. And they said that also was one of the reasons why they think it's more than an appearance of impropriety. It's a conflict of interest. And not just her, the entire office is disqualified. So this is another Trump indictment that sort of will disappear. And yes, they will appeal it, but Donald Trump's defense team will use the same arguments that they did for the Manhattan DA's office and say he's now going to be president. This should be suspended while he's president because you can't prosecute a sitting president.
So you think this just goes away, that this is the end of this case?
Well, practically, yes. I'm certain, I shouldn't say I'm certain, probably the Fulton County DA will appeal it, but Donald Trump is going to be president. And his lawyers are going to say, he's not going to Fulton County to appear in any case. So if anything's going to happen, you have to wait until 2029 when he's no longer in office. So this effectively is another case that sort of will just, one of the 4 indictments that will disappear.
One option, I am understanding, Greg, is this could end up being handed off to a different office, different prosecutor. Is there any other office or prosecutor in Georgia you think would make sense that would be willing to take this up?
That's such a good question, because there is a prosecuting attorney's council that could ostensibly take up a case like this. But earlier on this year, that same prosecuting attorney's council special prosecutor decided not to pursue similar charges against Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who Fani Willis was earlier disqualified against seeking charges against because of another conflict of interest, a completely separate conflict of interest. Wow. So they've already signaled they're very unlikely to seek any sort of charges against any of these co-defendants. And it's also important to note that the judges, the benches, the appellate court benches in Georgia are very conservative. The Court of Appeals is very conservative, and the Supreme Court, 8 of the 9 justices were appointed by Republican governors. So it's a very conservative bench here in Georgia.